Hi, I'm Nicole Georges Bennett, and I'm going to be reading to you my short story Affiliation, which is published in the Montage Dominique anthology, now available in paperback and ebook on Amazon.com. But first, I want you to imagine a society where objectivity is not a choice and where neutrality is not an option. I hope you can see my colors well. Affiliation. The interview was going so well, I made the mistake of allowing myself to hope. The manager scanned my certificates, and I held my breath. I'd done well in my year, 5 1s and 2 2s and A levels in maths and political science. Plus, he didn't know me personally. He was from Antigua. There was still a chance. Well, young man, these look very promising. He smiled at me over his bifocals. I exhaled and gave a lopsided smile in return. I wiped the sweat off my palms onto my slacks. He scanned the questionnaire I'd been required to fill, and then he frowned. Dread began to twist my stomach. He looked at me quizzically. You forgot to tick off under political affiliation, son. He pushed the form across the table at me. I knew it was useless, but I felt the words tumble out of my mouth. I don't have one. I'm neutral. I don't have an interest in politics, I babbled. He stared at me and then his bushy eyebrows rose slowly. So you don't support the current administration? His tone became stern. I tried to meet his gaze, but I felt so disarmed, that I couldn't. I licked my dry lips. I couldn't fail. Not again. Just tell him what he wants to hear, I thought. I don't vote. I don't believe in partisan politics, I said. I heard the hopeless tone in my voice. Well, that's naive. So you must be a supporter of the opposition then. He pulled the form towards him, opened a desk drawer, and dropped it in. He carefully put my certificates back in their folder and handed them back to me, and I took them automatically. I don't support any party, I repeated. I believe government should work for the good of all citizens, regardless of party affiliation. At that moment, the door opened and his secretary came in, and my heart sank. She had not been at her desk when I came in an hour earlier, so I'd escaped her sharp gaze. She was from my neighborhood and she knew me. It was all over. I turned, I stood up, I stuck my hand out stiffly to him. He glanced at it dubiously and then he shook it. I turned and I saw the shock of recognition on the secretary's face. As I left, I closed the door, but not before I heard her scandalized whisper. His head not good, you know. He was in the psychiatric unit after his father died. I walked quickly and wiped away hot tears from the corners of my eyes. I could have done that job blindfolded if he'd just given me a chance. I would have been the best employee he'd ever had. I caught the bus home and I stripped off. I had soaked through my dress shirt and jacket. I did my breathing exercises and I repeated my mantra. I am well. All is well. All shall be well. I could hear the whispering of voices at the edge of my consciousness trying to break through, so I built my mental wall, brick by brick. By the time I was finished, I was exhausted but proud. I had not let the voices win. My mother came home during her lunch hour, and we ate sandcoach with dumplings. She chewed methodically, but I could feel her eyes boring into my skull. So you open your big mouth and you don't get the job, not true? She scraped her fork back and forth across her plate loudly. I glanced up and I saw her wipe her face with tissue, leaving wisps of white fluff in the creases of her eyes and in the folds of her neck. She got up and pulled my plate from me. I had been saving a dumpling, and I watched glumly as she popped the whole thing in her mouth. She dropped the dishes with a clatter in the sink. All you have to say is I voting MPP or PPM. That's all you have to say. You're stubborn, just like your father. She said this from between clenched teeth. I watched her shoulders heave and I could hear the voices pressing against my mental wall. I cannot do that, Mommy. Nobody should be forced to support a political party just to get basic human rights and necessities, I said. Don't be calm. Be calm. Don't get angry. All is well. Boy, you are 23 years old. You don't have job. You don't have house. You don't even have a woman. You're crazy in your head and you need the expensive medicine. I cannot take all that burden. She rounded on me, holding a spoon and pointing it at me as her voice rose. How you think you get in the little food we have? How you think you get money to go school in foreign? Huh? Your father with his big talk about democracy. His mouth never stopped running. And it's me that had to go to the minister and beg for them to send you to school. You think that was easy for me? Ah? She jabbed a spoon at me and I felt every jab like a knife stab, tearing through my fragile psyche. He was a man of integrity, I said. He believed in a free and fair democracy. He died like a dog in his own vomit because no doctor would take him. And when he was so sick that last time we sit in the ER in the hallway and those nurses walk up and down by us, nobody do check us. The minute I say his name, the matron say his voter card show he doesn't vote and he not a true patriot. Sorrow rose out of her and surrounded her like a black storm cloud. It looked like she was drowning in it. I started to open my mouth to warn her, but suddenly realized it might be better not to. You taking your pills now? Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. I nodded because I couldn't trust myself to lie. I tried not to, but I began to picture my father lying on the floor of a hospital hallway. I knew I shouldn't think like that. It was a dangerous train of thought. In my imagination, he lay on the cold floor. Was it tiled or hard concrete? Did he feel the cold seep into his fevered bones? I looked through his eyes at the stockinged feet and orthopedic shoes flashing by. Did he regret his obsession for equality? All he had to do was say the right words, declare his party, announce his colors, or wave a flag, just to save his life. But he didn't. Instead, he died like a dog, just as my mother said. I felt the fury build up in me, not at the way of life that dictated I must align politically in order to get food and shelter and education. I was angry at my father for his outlandish principles and his refusal to conform. The voices echoed so loudly in my head that they shattered the protective wall that I had constructed, and now they ran rampant into every corner of my mind. I am well, all is well, all shall be well. But the voices screamed louder and gave me a new mantra. He was a fool. You are a fool, and you will die like a fool. My mother, her head and torso the only things visible from the storm cloud only I could see, left the house to go back to work. I went to the sink and I started to wash up, but the gleam of the silver knives seduced me. I rinsed the soap off my shaking hands and I went to my room. I had 2 doses left in the bottle that my mother had begged from a nurse at the public clinic. Because of my father, she would never have clear access to the necessities of life. But because she attended a political party's campaign meetings, she managed to eke out a living as a public toilet cleaner. I, however, would never be so lucky. I had inherited my father's disease, a conscience that could never be compromised. Thank you for listening.